So I've just described spirituality as an intentional, which means ritualized, habitual, regular practice that involves sacrifice of time and pleasure and convenience for the purpose of discovering your unique shape so that you can align it with the breath of the universe and the song can go through it. Can you keep that in your mind? How you do that is your choice. Will you be a flute made out of bamboo? Will you be a flute made out of wood? Will you be an organ pipe? I mentioned that on purpose because every week Marilyn plays something that brings back a memory for me. And she was playing Rosie Meter just a moment ago, Ralph Vaughan Williams' choral prelude. It's one of my favorites. Thank you so much. And when I was listening to it, I remember the last time I heard it. And I was walking through the Cathedral of St. Albans, which is north of London, which is a great old building, and there was the organist playing that away, and suddenly I was transported back to jolly old England. And I thought about that. And it wasn't jolly. There's a certain quality of British music that feels like fields and trees. And then I could remember the swans that were in the lake that came up to feed on the bread that the man had come to feed them. And then I was... Do you see what's happening? When the wind blows through you, your whole life goes through you, and everything you do echoes something else. I can look at all these walls and see sermons in every window and imagine the lives that made the windows and the names that I don't know and realize that all those stories are embedded in those windows and in these stones. I can see Duncan standing right up there, and David, and Alfred Wesley Wishart, and all the others who have stood there. I hear all their words, because that's what spirituality is. It's shaping your hollowness so that the wind of the past can blow through you into the future. That's spiritual fluency, and I'm not good at it. I'm not done. I still have to hollow out the rest of my flute. I still have to become a better vehicle, a better flute, a better organ pipe. So do you. I expect you to do this. And Jason and Elizabeth and I, and you or your friends, can help you do it because we all want to have a life that sings. We all want to have a life that makes music. And if you've ever been here when Marilyn is practicing, you'll know what goes on. If you're back in the back and she's working, she'll work on the same 3 or 4 measures for 10 minutes. That's what musicians do. Now, when they're working on it, it's very intense, and they're trying very hard to get their fingers to align. Because if you don't get it right, it won't work the time you want it to work. So we do it over and over. And I don't know, any of you have kids that ever played the violin or the piano? Whoa, do you remember what it's like to hear the same thing over? Yeah, it's hard. It's hard on you. Spiritual life is practicing your instrument. It is practicing the scales. Ed told me at the early worship that scales are fun. Well, if you're good at it, yeah, but if you're bad at it, it's still a struggle. And even those who do them really well still have to do them and find themselves at the beginning periodically, don't you? Find yourself at the very beginning starting over. Spiritual practice, spiritual life is playing the scales. There's a wonderful phrase in Auden's Christmas oratorio at the very end when it talks about the period from Christmas to Easter, a great empty space in the Christian calendar. And it talks about how this is the time when the Spirit must practice its scales of devotion without scales of rejoicing, without even a hostile audience. That's spiritual life, friends, practicing the scales. Over and over. It's doing the conjugations. It's working out the algebra. It's the day-to-day stuff. Which is why I salute you. because you came today. Something in you said, I need to play a few scales on my soul's harp. It's worth going through the snow. And yes, the lion dancers were very cool. But if we need to put shows on to get you to come, that's not a spiritual practice, is it? That's a show. If you want to have a spiritual life, you do it even when no one's listening. You do it even when you don't want to. You do it when it's difficult. Because over time, you will find that hollow flute being opened up. And you'll hear a note and suddenly you'll be in England or in Japan. You'll see a light and you'll remember spring. That's what it is to be spiritually awake. In the Christian tradition today, the story comes out of Matthew, and it says that as Jesus was walking, I'll get it right. As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea because they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And immediately they left their nets and went after him. Here's the question I want to put to you as spiritual creatures on the path. What would make you stop whatever you're doing right now and do that instead? Do you even know what that is? That's your spiritual path calling. You don't have to drop the net, but know what it is that's calling you today. The thing that's pointing you toward the instrument you need to become. And even if you only take one step today and another boring step tomorrow, and even if all you ever do is come to church and appreciate life and clean the dishes, but you do it with all your heart, you will get where you need to go. I'll be back next week, and I'll bring it all together with one more sermon called Greater Expectations. I just can't get over how lucky I am to know you guys.